They found it at dawn, when the air still smelled of cold stone and split dates. Beside the stone rim of the well, folded with unsettling care, lay a gray cotton thobe. It wasn't tossed or abandoned. It had been arranged, sleeves aligned, fabric smoothed as if someone had taken their time. Next to it rested a small leather pouch tied with a clean, deliberate knot. Inside was red sand, damp, as if taken from the bottom of a canal rather than the surface of the desert. And placed on top of the folded cloth, like a final punctuation mark, was something that did not belong there at all. A metal token. Round, heavy, stamped with a number and a small emblem shaped like a sunburst, the official marker of the district post office. Only postal employees carried such tokens. No camel trader, no laborer, no traveler should ever have had one in his hands. There was no body, no blood, no screams that anyone could swear they had heard. Just a well, folded clothing, and a piece of bureaucracy lying in the dust. In a small oasis town, 2 rows of low houses, 1 mosque, a Thursday market, and a post office that opened more out of obligation than purpose, the word disappearance was avoided. People said he left. They said the desert took him. They said God knows. But Salim al-Hariri did not accept answers that ended conversations. Salim was young, thin, serious in a way that came not from authority but from habit. Before wearing a uniform, he had been a clerk. He understood ledgers, stamps, the quiet power of written names. He carried a small notebook and a worn pencil everywhere because he knew memory in small towns worked like boiling water, loud at first, then quickly gone. People gathered around the well. Men murmured. Women watched from half-open doors. The neighborhood elder, his white beard carefully combed, raised a calming hand. "There is no need for noise," he said gently. "Perhaps he slipped. Perhaps the underground current carried him away. The market must continue. The prayers must continue." Salim crouched down without asking permission. The sand around the well was too neat. The stone rim bore old scratches from ropes and hands, but that morning everything looked composed. If a man had fallen, there would have been scraped stone, scattered footprints, signs of panic. Instead, the ground looked prepared. Salim lifted the leather pouch and brought it closer. Beneath the smell of wet sand was something else, familiar and wrong in this place. Resin. Camel grease. The same mixture craftsmen used to seal water skins and storage bladders. When warmed, it left a sharp, sweet trace. "Whose clothing is this?" Salim asked. A nervous young man answered first. Hashim ibn Huzaima. He was here last night, came for water." "Alone?" "He had a sack of flour, said he was heading toward the road, said he was in a hurry." Salim picked up the metal token. It was cool, but oddly clean, lacking the dust it should have collected overnight. It looked placed. "Does anyone here work at the post office?" he asked. Silence followed. The post office meant letters, money transfers, orders from outside. People preferred not to be associated with it. Finally, a man with ink-stained fingers stepped forward. "I'm the assistant, but that token isn't mine. Those are for the chief and the courier." "And why," Salim asked calmly, "would a postal token be lying on a camel trader's clothes?" The man shrunk, shrinking into himself. Someone lost it, or someone left it. Salim stood. The elder spoke again. "Salim, my son, fate does not always leave marks." Salim did not argue, but in his mind, fate did not fold clothes. He walked slowly around the well. His boots barely disturbed the sand. Near the outer edge, where few people stepped, he noticed something small and unimportant enough that others ignored it. A thin strand of twine. Not the thick rope used for drawing water, but fine braided cord, 3 tight strands and a fourth one looser, the kind some craftsmen use to tie skins and bundles. One end was hardened, coated with something sticky. Resin, grease. Salim carefully placed the strand between the pages of his notebook. "I'm going to the post office," he said aloud. No one stopped him. No one followed. The post office was a plain rectangular room, a table, a cabinet of compartments, a ceiling fan turning slowly, lazily. The postmaster sat behind the desk, his mustache stiff, his posture defensive. "You interrupt me over lost clothing," he snapped. Salim placed the metal token on the desk. It struck the wood with a dull, heavy sound. "This was found by the well. It belongs to the post." The postmaster picked it up, checked the number. For a brief moment, just a flicker, his expression changed. "That belongs to the courier," he said. "He uses it to access the compartments." "Where is he now?" "He hasn't arrived today. Delayed, perhaps." Salim kept his voice level. "Hashim ibn Huzaima is missing. His clothes were folded. This token was placed on top, like a signature." The postmaster's jaw tightened. "People disappear. You're making theater." "Did Hashim have registered mail, transfers, debts?" At the word debts, the air in the room shifted. "The affairs of the post are post affairs," he said sharply. Salim inhaled. "Then let me see the ledger, yesterday and today." "You're crossing lines," the postmaster warned. "That brings trouble." "The trouble is already at the well," Salim replied. After a long pause, the postmaster opened a drawer and removed a yellowed book. Salim turned the pages carefully. Names, dates, stamps. And then he saw it. A registered item in Hashim's name, collected the previous afternoon, signed for with a steady hand that was not Hashim's. Listed witness, Mutaz ad-Diklawi. Salim looked up. "Who is Mutaz?" he asked. The postmaster shrugged. "A craftsman, repairs water skins, arrived months ago, quiet man, lives near the market." Salim closed the ledger. Outside, the sun had climbed higher. The town felt alive again. Too alive. Back at the well, the clothes still waited. The sand, the stone. Salim examined the rim once more and noticed a faint shine in a crack. He scraped it with his nail. Dried resin. The same smell, the same substance, the same patience. Salim straightened and looked toward the market, where craftsmen opened stalls and hung goods, where resin was heated, where cord was cut, where a quiet man lived, with a name that appeared where it should not have. "Not fate," Salim whispered. "Someone." And for the first time since dawn, the case had a direction.
Mutaz ad-Diklawi's workshop smelled the way quiet places always did. Old leather, smoke, and the faint bitterness of heated resin. The door was open to the morning heat, but the inside stayed dim. Light slipped through gaps in the roof beams and fell in thin strips across hanging water skins and half-repaired sacks. To anyone passing by, Mutaz looked like the kind of man you forgot the moment you turned away. He was not tall, not broad. His beard was kept short, his hands always clean, his shirt always buttoned. He spoke softly, with an accent that never fully belonged to the oasis towns, a softness in certain vowels, a carefulness around certain consonants. Some people said his father had come from across the sea. Others whispered a more complicated story. Trade routes, old marriages, lost documents, the kind of history that made officials uncomfortable. Mutaz never corrected anyone. He fixed what people brought him. He smiled politely. He charged fair prices. He never argued, never raised his voice, never joined gossip circles at the tea stalls. In a town that measured men by the noise they made, his quietness worked like camouflage. On the wall above his workbench hung 3 things: a bundle of braided cord, a small tin container of resin, and a narrow wooden plank marked with tiny cuts, Measurements, not decorative, a craftsman's habits. A man entered carrying a torn skin bag, leaking at the seam. "Mutaz," he said, setting it down. "I need this for tomorrow. The caravan leaves before noon." Mutaz nodded and ran his thumb along the split seam as if reading a line of text. "It will hold," he said, "but don't drag it across stone. Leather hates stone." The man chuckled like it was a joke, but Mutaz didn't smile. He wasn't joking. He rarely did. When the customer left, Mutaz leaned into the shadowy back corner of the workshop and opened a small cabinet built into the wall. Inside were scraps of leather, extra cord, and sealed jars that looked like supplies to anyone who didn't care to look closer. He took out a pouch of red sand, the same kind of leather pouch as the one by the well, the same tight knot. The sand inside was damp, heavy. He held it for a moment, then placed it back and closed the cabinet gently. No slam, no rush. A footstep behind him. "You shouldn't keep opening it," Naila said. Her voice was calm, firm in a way that did not ask for permission. Mutaz turned. "It's only a check." Naila stepped into the light, and the workshop looked suddenly different, not brighter, just sharper. She moved with deliberate economy, like someone who learned early that small gestures could be loud. She was younger than Mutaz by several years, with eyes that stayed still when she listened. Her hair was covered, her dress plain but clean, her hands unmarked by labor. If Mutaz belonged to the workshop, Naila belonged to the town itself, to its social currents, its unwritten rules, its fears. She had been born into a respected family in another district. People knew her lineage even if they didn't know her story. She had married Mutaz quietly, without celebrations. No one asked too many questions. In small towns, it was often safer not to. Naila walked to the workbench and touched the tin container of resin. "You used too much yesterday," she said. Mutaz's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked away. "The seam needed sealing," he replied. "The seam didn't. Your nerves did." She spoke the truth as if it were normal conversation. "We don't leave smells. We don't leave habits. We don't leave patterns." Mutaz exhaled through his nose. "There was no pattern. The well is a well. Men go missing. It happens." Naila's gaze sharpened. "And the postal token? Does that happen, too?" Mutaz didn't answer. He didn't need to. The token had been her idea. Not the token itself, but the message behind it. A small push, a warning, a reminder that people who moved money and paper were not untouchable. She had expected fear. She had expected the town to whisper, then bury the story under prayers and routine. She hadn't expected Salim al-Hariri. Naila had seen him once months ago, outside the post office, a young officer with a clerk's eyes, the kind that didn't slide past details, the kind that noticed ink stains and seal marks and counted pauses in speech. "Someone is asking questions," she said. Mutaz's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Questions of smoke, they float away. Not his. Naila turned slightly, as if listening to the street outside. He keeps things, in a notebook, in his head. Mutaz rubbed his thumb along a strip of cord on the bench, feeling the braided pattern. He liked textures. They calmed him. Everything in his world made sense when it could be tightened, sealed, measured. Naila watched him for a moment, then reached into her sleeve and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a letter. It was something more dangerous in its simplicity. A list of names. Mutaz looked at it without touching it. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Naila's lips barely moved. "Women talk," she said. "Wives talk. Sisters talk. They talk when they are angry, when they are scared, when they want someone else's suffering to feel smaller than their own." Mutaz's eyes scanned the names. One was circled. "A merchant?" he asked. "A courier's friend," Naila corrected. "He handles transfers. He likes to lend money and then pretend he's saving families. He has receipts. He has leverage. He has made 2 women cry this month." Mutaz's fingers hovered over the page, but he didn't touch it. "We said no more post things," he muttered.
We said no repeating, not no post, not no market, no repeating. She tapped the circled name with her nail. This one doesn't disappear at a well. This one disappears in a way that everyone will call ordinary, a mistake, an accident, a stupidity. Mutaz stared at the name. He didn't look excited. He didn't look bloodthirsty. If anything, he looked like a man deciding whether to carry an extra sack on a long road. "What do we gain?" he asked quietly. Naila leaned closer. "Time, space, silence, and the rest of what he's been collecting." Mutaz finally touched the paper, folded it once, then placed it in a narrow drawer beneath the bench, the drawer where he kept only the things Naila chose. Outside, someone passed by and greeted them. Naila answered with a warm voice, as if she had been discussing nothing more than household expenses. Mutaz waited until the footsteps faded. "You're certain?" he asked. Naila met his eyes, steady and unmoving. "I'm certain, and I'm also certain of something else." "What?" She lowered her voice. "That officer, Salim, he isn't the kind that stops when elders tell him to stop." Mutaz's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Naila continued, calm as ever. "So we don't frighten the town, we don't leave puzzles, we don't show pride. We make it look like the world is simply what it always was, careless, hot, unfair." Mutaz nodded once. In his mind, it was not killing. It was sealing a scene before it tore wider. Naila walked to the doorway and looked out towards the market, where people moved like they always did, buying, selling, laughing, complaining, pretending that the world could not break them. Then she said something that sounded almost gentle. "Tonight," she said, "we go where mistakes happen." Mutaz picked up a length of braided cord and began to measure it against the marked plank. 1 cut, 2 cuts, 3 cuts. The cord did not need to be long, not for what they intended.
In the late afternoon, the market looked harmless. Sunlight poured over piles of dates and sacks of rice. Men argued over weights and prices. Boys ran between stalls, barefoot and loud, carrying small errands like trophies. The heat softened everything, voices, tempers, even suspicion. In towns like this, people believed crime needed darkness. They believed daylight meant safety. That belief was useful. The man Naila had circled on her list was named Rafiq ibn Marwan. He wasn't rich in the way city people were rich, but he lived well, well enough that others noticed. He lent money, handled transfers, and kept receipts like weapons. He liked to call himself a helper, a stabilizer, a man who kept families afloat. He also liked control. That afternoon, Rafiq walked through the market with an easy confidence, greeting shopkeepers as if they owed him their smiles. He stopped near Mutaz's workshop because Mutaz's door was open, and because Mutaz was the kind of craftsman a man like Rafiq could use. Mutaz looked up from his bench and nodded politely. "Peace be upon you," Mutaz said. "And upon you," Rafiq replied. His eyes swept the workshop. "I need an order, not repair, a new skin, strong, travel quality." Mutaz wiped his hands, slow and careful. "For a caravan?" "For a shipment, something important, something that must not leak." Mutaz's tone stayed neutral. "Come back at sunset, I'll show you options." Rafiq smirked, as if amused that a craftsman dared to schedule him. "Sunset then, don't waste my time." He left, satisfied, not because of the bag, because he had made someone else wait on him. From across the market, Naila watched without staring. She stood among women near a spice stall, her posture relaxed, her voice low, her presence ordinary. She had asked small questions all day, the kind that sounded like gossip but were actually measurements. Who saw Rafiq last night? Who did he argue with? Who owed him money? Where did he go when he was angry? Women answered because Naila knew how to make them feel safe while they spoke.
She nodded at the right moments. She frowned at the right names. She let them believe they were simply sharing stories, not handing over a map. When Rafik disappeared into the crowd, Naila turned and walked away. By sunset, the market thinned, the heat eased, shadows stretched longer, and the town began to shift into its evening rhythm. Prayer, family meals, quiet conversations on doorsteps. Rafik returned to Mutaz's workshop alone. Mutaz greeted him with the same soft voice and the same careful respect. "I have something," Mutaz said, reaching beneath the bench and lifting a medium-sized water skin. The leather looked new, but not flashy, solid, practical, exactly what Rafik would choose if he wanted to look clever rather than vain. Rafik squeezed the sides, testing. "Not bad," he said. "How much?" Mutaz gave a price. It was fair, almost too fair. Rafik narrowed his eyes, suspicious only because he was accustomed to being cheated or flattered. "You're underselling," he said. "I'm not," Mutaz replied. "I want steady customers, not one-time arguments." Rafik liked that. It sounded like obedience dressed as business. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small roll of bills. That was when Naila stepped into the doorway, carrying a folded cloth as if she had simply arrived to bring something home. She nodded politely towards Rafik, then looked at Mutaz with the calm authority of a wife who had a normal reason to interrupt. "The strap on the back rack," she said, as if continuing an earlier conversation. "It's cracked. If it snaps, we'll lose half the load." Mutaz's expression did not change, but his hands paused for half a heartbeat. Rafik glanced between them. "Back rack?" he asked. "Our storage frame," Naila said smoothly. "If you're buying a travel skin, you know straps matter. A snapped strap can ruin everything." She said it like advice, like help, like she was doing Rafik a favor. Rafik felt the hook without noticing it. "I have straps," Rafik said. "Mine are fine." Naila tilted her head, polite, almost apologetic. "I'm sure they are," she said, "but I saw your pack animal last week. The leather looked dry. Old leather cracks quietly." Rafik's pride stirred. He hated the idea of being observed, judged, found lacking, especially with a woman speaking with gentle certainty. "Show me," he said. Mutaz didn't argue. He simply gestured toward the back of the workshop. "There's a small yard behind," Mutaz said. "Less dust, better light." It was true. It sounded practical. Rafik followed. The yard was narrow, enclosed by a low wall. In the corner were stacked frames, broken crates, and old sacks. Nothing suspicious, just the clutter of work. Naila stepped out behind them and closed the workshop door halfway, not fully, enough that the street noise softened, enough that their voices would not carry clearly. Still, anyone passing could have glanced and thought, a craftsman showing goods, a customer inspecting, a wife nearby. Ordinary. Mutaz lifted an old strap from a frame and held it up. "See the fibers?" he asked. "Dry. That's how it begins." Rafik leaned in, squinting. Naila stood slightly behind him, a step to the side. Her hands were empty, her face was calm. Mutaz turned the strap, pointing to a crack line. Rafik leaned closer. And then it happened quickly, not like a dramatic attack, not like a street robbery, more like a mistake that could be explained later if someone wanted to explain it. Rafik felt sudden pressure from behind, tight and controlled. His body tensed in surprise more than panic. He tried to speak, but the sound that came out was small, strangled by panic. His hands went up instinctively, grabbing at whatever held him. There was no screaming. The yard swallowed sound. Naila moved in close, not frantic, not wild, precise. She kept his elbows from flailing, kept his cheeks from kicking loud against the ground. In that moment, she wasn't emotional, she was logistical. Rafik struggled for longer than he expected because panic makes time expand. But Mutaz did not rush.
He waited in the way craftsmen wait for glue to set, patient, steady, certain. When Rafik finally goes limp, Mutaz lowered him carefully. Naila checked his face, her eyes cold and practical, then nodded once. "Now," she said. They did not drag him through the street. They did not create a trail. They worked inside the logic of the place. Behind the stacked frames, Mutaz had prepared something earlier that day, a large, empty storage barrel lined with thick cloth and treated with resin along the rim. It wasn't new. It wasn't strange. It looked like what it was, a container used in workshops, something nobody questioned. They placed Rafik inside with controlled movements. They covered him with cloth and old leather scraps. They sealed the lid with a strip of resin. No blood, no mess, no spectacle. Naila stepped back and looked around the yard. "Nothing left?" she asked. Mutaz scanned the ground. He noticed a faint scuff mark where Rafik's heel had scraped the dust. He took a handful of loose sand and smoothed it, like erasing a pencil line. "Nothing," he said. Then Naila did something that turned the act from simple murder into a message. She took a small scrap of paper from her sleeve, one of Rafik's own receipt slips, stolen earlier from his pouch at the market. She folded it and tucked it into the barrel seam before the resin fully hardened, leaving the edge barely visible. A marker, not for the public, for the future. That night, Rafik did not return home. His wife waited, then sent a cousin to ask questions. The cousin went to the market and heard that Rafik had visited Mutaz. A neighbor mentioned seeing him near the workshop at sunset. Another person said he planned to travel early. By morning, the town began to do what towns always do, build stories from gaps. He ran away. He was taken on the road. He got what he deserved. Salim al-Hariri heard the name Rafik before he heard the details. He arrived at the workshop with a polite knock and an official posture that did not match his youth. Mutaz opened the door with calm eyes. "Officer," he said, "how can I help?" Salim's gaze moved, not to Mutaz's face, but to his hands, to the bench, to the cord, to the resin tin. "You saw Rafik ibn Marwan yesterday," Salim said. Mutaz nodded easily. "He came to ask about a water skin, yes." "What time?" "Near sunset." "Did he leave?" Mutaz didn't hesitate. "Yes, he left." Salim did not accuse. He simply watched the way Mutaz answered, smoothly, without the usual irritation people showed when questioned. "And your wife?" Salim asked. Naila appeared in the doorway as if she had been standing there the whole time. "Peace be upon you, officer," she said warmly. Salim nodded.
The second town didn't even call it murder. They called it bad air. A week after Rafik vanished, a thin telegram arrived at the district office, delivered by a boy who ran as if speed could make words less serious. Salim al-Hariri read it twice before he trusted what it said. Way Station Al-Hadra, man found dead in storage room, likely accident, stop. Name, Hamdan al-Sabahi, stop. Request confirmation of ID, stop. Salim folded the paper carefully, as if creasing it wrong might change the outcome. Al-Hadra was not far in map distance, but far in reality. A dusty stopping point where caravans and trucks rested, where men slept in shifts, where trouble was expected in small doses and ignored in larger ones. He left before noon. The road was hard-packed dirt and stone, the kind that punished impatience. Salim rode in the back of a government pickup with two constables who didn't speak much. Wind slapped his face and filled his mouth with grit. He didn't mind. His mind was already elsewhere, building a shape out of scattered pieces. Hashim at the well, Rafik near the market, now Hamdan at a way station. Three names that didn't belong together until you asked what they had in common. Money, transfers, paper, leverage. When they reached Al-Hadra, The town looked like it had been assembled quickly and never finished. A few low buildings, a tea stall, a mechanic's shade roof, and a cluster of storage rooms behind the main courtyard where caravans unloaded sacks and reloaded them without asking too many questions. A local officer met them at the entrance, sweating through his uniform and smiling like he wanted the problem to shrink. "Officer Salim," he said, too cheerful. "It's nothing dramatic. A man slept in a storage room with a brazier. These things happen." Salim's eyes moved past the man's face to the storage block. "Show me," he said. Inside the narrow corridor, the air smelled of ash and old grain. The storage room door was open. A charcoal brazier sat near the far wall, blackened, dead. Around it were sacks, ropes, a broken wooden crate. Everything looked normal, in the way normal looked after people had walked through it and decided what story they wanted. Salim crouched by the brazier without touching it. "The door was locked?" he asked. The local officer nodded. "From the outside, but that's common here. People lock rooms to stop theft." Salim lifted his head slowly. "Who locked it?" he asked. The local officer hesitated just long enough to matter. "A guard said he did," he answered. "He thought Hamdan was inside resting. He locked it for safety. Later, they found him not breathing." Salim stood. Hamdan al-Sabahi. He wasn't a famous man, but his name carried weight in the right circles. He traveled with shipments, handled small accounts, escorted transfers, moved between towns like a moving page in a ledger, a man useful to many and loved by few. "Where is the body?" Salim asked. "In the small clinic," the officer said quickly. "But again, it's clear." Salim cut him off with a look, not anger, just refusal. At the clinic, Hamdan lay wrapped in a sheet. His face was calm in death, like sleep. No wounds, no blood, nothing for gossip to cling to. That was why the town wanted it to be an accident. Accidents were clean stories. Salim asked to see Hamdan's belongings. The local officer brought a small pouch, a belt knife, a notebook, and a folded slip of paper, part receipt, part travel note. The paper smelled faintly of resin, which was absurd for a man whose job was numbers. Salim turned the slip over. On one corner, barely visible, was an impression, a partial stamp mark, as if someone had pressed it against another document once, a sunburst shape, the same postal emblem he'd seen at the token at the well. His chest tightened. "Who was the last person to speak with him?" Salim asked. They took him to the tea stall, where men sat in half circles and pretended not to stare. A caravan guard stepped forward, eyes cautious. "He argued with a couple," the guard said. "A couple?" The guard nodded. "A craftsman and his wife. They came from the oasis towns, said they were traveling to visit family. The man offered to repair Hamdan's straps. The wife talked, a lot, friendly, too friendly." Salim kept his expression flat, but his pencil moved fast across his notebook. "What did they look like?" he asked. The guard described them. Quiet man, short beard, clean hands. Wife with steady eyes, polite smile, voice like warm tea. Salim didn't need the names to know. Still, he asked, "Did you hear what they were called?" The guard looked uncertain, then said, "Someone called him Mutaz, I think." Salim felt something cold settle into place inside him. A suspicion was no longer a suspicion, it was a direction with a name. He walked back to the storage corridor and studied the door frame. The lock had scratches, shallow and neat, not from panic, from careful work. Then he noticed it. On the floor, near the threshold, half hidden under dust, lay a tiny piece of braided cord, thin, trenzado tight, 3 strands and a looser fourth, the same pattern as the strand he'd collected at the well. He picked it up with the corner of his handkerchief and held it in the light. It wasn't proof yet, but it was repetition, and repetition was the enemy of accident.
As Salim stepped outside, a vehicle approached in a cloud of dust, another government pickup, this one older and harder used. A tall man got out, his posture controlled, his eyes sharp in a way Salim recognized immediately. Not a local officer, a man who belonged to a wider map. "Salim al-Hariri?" the man asked. Salim nodded. "And you are?" "Faris al-Gunaim," he replied, showing a credential without flourish. "I received a report about the well case and the postal token. Now there's a dead transfer escort at Al-Hajra. Too many coincidences for 1 week." Salim studied him. Faris had the calm of someone who'd seen towns lie politely and cities lie aggressively. "I have a name," Salim said quietly. Faris raised an eyebrow. "Whose?" Salim didn't hesitate. "Mutaz al-Diklawi," he said, "and his wife, Naila." Faris's eyes narrowed, not in disbelief, but in calculation. "Do you have anything that holds in court?" he asked. Salim opened his notebook and showed him the twine fragment, the resin note, the stamp impression sketch. "I have the same cord pattern in 2 places, resin traces where they don't belong, and witnesses who saw a quiet craftsman offering repairs right before the death." Faris looked toward the storage rooms, then back at Salim. "This is no longer a town matter," Faris said. "This becomes a case." Behind them, the tea stall noise continued as if nothing had changed. Men sipped and watched. Life practiced denial like a skill. But the investigation had just crossed a line, from rumor to coordination. Salim felt it in the way Faris spoke, in the way the local officers suddenly stopped smiling. Faris glanced down at the cord fragment. "They're careful," Faris said. "Careful people don't start making mistakes unless something pressures them." Salim's gaze drifted toward the road stretching back toward the oasis towns. "Or until they think no one is watching," Salim replied. Faris nodded once. "Then we watch." And for the first time since the folded clothes at the well, Salim was not alone in wanting the truth more than the town wanted peace.
The post office smelled like ink and heat. In the district town, it was the one place where paper mattered more than faces, where a stamped name could move money across sand faster than a camel ever could. Salim stood at the entrance with Faris al-Gunaim beside him, and for the first time, the postmaster did not posture like a king. He looked like a man realizing his walls were made of paper. "Officer Faris," the postmaster said, forcing a smile. "We weren't told." "You were told the moment your token showed up at a well," Faris replied, voice even. "Now, I'm telling you again, we're auditing your ledgers." The word auditing landed like a slap. The postmaster swallowed. "This is unnecessary. People misplace things. Couriers are careless." "Careless is one thing," Salim said. "Careless doesn't leave a postal emblem beside 2 dead men and 1 missing." The postmaster's eyes flicked to Salim's notebook. He knew that notebook. Everyone did. In small towns, a man who writes down names becomes a threat. Faris stepped past him without waiting and pointed toward the cabinet of compartments. "Start with outgoing transfers, last 4 months. Names: Hashim ibn Huzaima, Rafiq ibn Marwan, Hamdan al-Sabahi." The postmaster hesitated. Then he reached for the ledger as if it might burn his fingers. They worked for hours. Salim read entries like he used to when he was a clerk, eyes moving quickly, mind holding patterns. Faris watched the people in the room, not the pages, who fidgeted, who swallowed, who tried to speak too much. By midday, Salim had filled 3 pages with notes, not conclusions, connections. Hashim had received a registered item 2 days before he vanished. Rafiq had filed a transfer request the morning he disappeared. Hamdan carried a travel slip with a faint stamp impression. Different cases, different towns, but always the same orbit: paper, money, and access. Faris pointed to a line in the ledger. "Who is this?" he asked. The name was written in clear script. Mutaz ad-Dikhlawi, listed as a witness on a pickup and once as the person who delivered a package on behalf of another. The postmaster cleared his throat. "He's helpful," he said weakly. "Sometimes people ask someone else to pick up items if they can't come." Salim's eyes lifted. "And you allow that?" he asked. The postmaster sweated, shrugging. "In small towns, we use judgment." Faris stared at him until the shrug died. "Judgment is not law, and it's not a defense," Faris said. Salim leaned closer to the page and noticed something else. Certain entries were written with the same pen pressure, the same slight slant, as if the same hand had filled them in at different times. Not the postmaster's handwriting. He glanced toward the assistant, the man with ink-stained fingers who had spoken at the well. The assistant looked away immediately. Faris followed Salim's gaze. "Bring him," Faris said. The assistant was pulled into a back room. The door closed. No shouting followed, but the silence grew thicker. Salim waited outside with his notebook open. He did not enjoy pressure. He did not enjoy fear, but he had learned something. Truth often lived behind discomfort. After a few minutes, Faris opened the door and motioned Salim in. The assistant sat hunched, hands clasped tight. "He's ready to speak," Faris said. The assistant's voice came out thin. "I didn't steal any token, I swear. The courier lost his once, months ago. We searched, couldn't find it." "And then?" Salim asked gently. The assistant swallowed. "And then a woman came," he said. "She wasn't loud, she didn't demand anything. She was polite. She asked questions like she was curious, like she was just trying to understand the system. She said her husband was new in town and didn't want to make mistakes with transfers." Salim's pencil moved. "What did she look like?" he asked, though he already knew. "Steady eyes, a calm smile. She spoke like she belonged here." "Naila." "And did she ever touch the cabinet?" Salim asked. The assistant shook his head quickly. "Not while I watched, but she came more than once, and sometimes she came when the postmaster stepped out." Faris's voice stayed flat. "Did you ever let her into restricted space?" he asked. The assistant's face tightened with shame. "She asked to see a form," he said. "She said she couldn't read the stamp line. She was respectful. She made me feel stupid for refusing." Salim felt a quiet anger, not at the assistant, but at the precision of the manipulation. "She made you open the cabinet," Salim said. The assistant nodded, eyes wet. "She didn't take anything then, at least I didn't see. But after that, when the courier's new token arrived, the old one was suddenly found in the storeroom, like it appeared." Faris stepped closer. "And you reported that?" he asked. The assistant shook his head. "I didn't want trouble," he whispered. "The postmaster would blame me, and she was from a respected family, people said. I didn't want to accuse her." Salim wrote a sentence in his notebook and underlined it twice. "Influence operations. Token reappears. Cabinet opened without record." Faris exhaled. "This is how you kill with paper," he said quietly. They returned to the main room. The postmaster stood stiff, pretending he hadn't been listening. Faris ordered the ledgers sealed and copied. He told the postmaster he would be questioned again. The postmaster nodded like a man agreeing to drowning. Outside, the street was bright, too bright for the heaviness now sitting between them. Salim and Faris walked toward the district office. Along the way, Faris spoke low. "Mutaz is useful," he said. "Repairs skins, ties straps, offers help. He can move in places where officials can't." "And Naila moves in places men don't watch," Salim said. "Women's spaces,
private conversations. She doesn't force doors, she makes people open them. Faris nodded. Which means she can also redirect, Faris said. Salim looked up. Redirect what? Faris's eyes stayed on the road ahead. Suspicion, he said. A clever criminal doesn't only hide, they point. As if summoned by the thought, a man approached them from the market side, breathing fast, sweating, eyes wide. "Officer Salim," he called. "There's trouble. People are saying you're blaming the wrong ones. They say the man who died at Al-Hadra, he fought with a driver from the northern road. They say the driver is guilty." Faris's gaze sharpened. "Who says?" The messenger hesitated. "Everyone. It's spreading. Someone heard it from a woman. She said her cousin saw it. They say the driver fled." Salim's stomach tightened. It was too fast, too neat. Naila was planting a scapegoat. They reached the district office and found the rumor already alive inside. 2 junior officers argued about the driver. A supervisor demanded an arrest to calm the towns. Salim looked at Faris. Faris looked back. "This is her," Salim said quietly. Faris nodded once. "Good," he replied. "Let her waste energy." Salim didn't understand at first. Faris continued. "A false trail means she thinks we're close enough to matter. That's pressure. Pressure produces mistakes." Salim's mind moved quickly. If we arrest an innocent man, the towns will feel satisfied. They'll stop talking. They'll stop watching. "And she'll feel safe again," Faris said, "which is what we can't allow." Salim stared at the office window, where the sun reflected off glass like a blind spot. "So we don't arrest," Salim said. Faris's voice was firm. "We verify," he said. "We set a line she can't predict. We build evidence that doesn't depend on rumor." Salim opened his notebook and flipped to the page where he had written the cord pattern, the resin smell, the postal emblem. He added a new heading, Naila, Influence Operations. Then he wrote beneath it, "If she points, watch where she wants us not to look." That evening, as the district office prepared official requests for cross-town records, Salim went back to the market alone, not to question men at tea stalls, to listen. He found Naila where he expected her, near a cloth merchant, speaking softly to 2 women. She laughed lightly at something, her posture relaxed, her face innocent. Salim did not approach her. He stood at a distance and watched. Naila's eyes moved once, just once, toward the post office, then away. A tiny glance, a habit, a mistake. Salim turned and walked back to Faris with something more valuable than suspicion, a sense of her rhythm. And rhythm, Salim knew, could be timed.